Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, once again joined by Zepsi. We both do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but we don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. We're just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. Welcome, Zep.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going really good. I know we have a couple HTS tokens that are pumping this week. We have Karate. I know in recent weeks we've had Galaxy go on a run. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So the first thing I want to get into is that we often talk about things in payments and banking the Bankless and cross-border remittances in isolation. We have WePay, which is one of the largest payment processors in the Caribbean, and they're expanding outside of that. They're using Hedera. We have Flutterwave. They are the largest fintech in Africa, and they're going to be using Hedera for payments and cross-border remittances. We also have Bank Social, which we had an interview with the CEO, John, just a few weeks ago. They are building the first fully Web3 credit union, and it's going to be federally chartered and everything else. We have Drop, which of course was featured by FedNow. Actually, it sounds like there's going to be integrations with FedNow from both Drop and from the DeFi credit union we were just talking about. We also have the Stablecoin Studio, which is enabling teams like Shinhan Bank and others to have really successful proof of concepts. And since they are successful, these are eventually going to make it to market. We also have Carmel Cadet at MTech. They are one of the solutions for central banks that are interested in leveraging the DLT technology in our space. And she just talked at the Atlanta Council and the Digital Dollar Project. It was a conference that they were holding. And she had some really interesting insights. So listen in.
I personally believe that everyone deserves access to an inclusive and sound financial market. Mm-hmm. Money impacts everything in our lives, and everyone deserves access to that. How do you make it inclusive? Being able to use, like we said, tokenization and building infrastructure that makes that possible, where someone, even without a bank account, can access good financial products. Yep. That's definitely one goal for me. The second is it needs to be sound. And what that means is regulatory environments that not only protect consumers, but also understands that there is a need for innovation for finance to be inclusive. So that combination is really a space that I'm spending a lot of time on and working with regulators on. How do you develop, how do you leverage technology to enable you to be a better regulator and balancing innovation and regulation?
Now, Zep, in the crypto space, there is often a lot of conjecture and speculation around which projects are actually gaining traction in this cross-border payments and just payments space in general. But this is real stuff that's happening within Hedera. One of the things is it hasn't actually made its way to mainnet, at least in scale yet, but it sounds like 2024 is going to be the year when we're going to start to see that ramp up. Do you have any thoughts?
What's exciting when seeing, sort of things go from ideation to proof of concept to pilot and then, mainnet inevitably is that I haven't really seen this happening on any other networks. Some networks, they got a lot of market share, a lot of momentum, a lot of their communities based on this early premise of blockchain technology, which was driving financial inclusion, giving traditional financial services like lending, borrowing, etc., to those people that don't have access to a traditional bank. People who might have a mobile phone but don't have the credentials to go into a bank and set up, a real legacy banking account. But Hedera here has really, like you said, highlighting all of the work in Africa and beyond, has really taken the lead here. When we look at the markets currently in terms of stablecoins and this kind of thing, it is mostly dollar dominated. It's USDC, it's USDT, denominations of the digital dollar. But what we're seeing here is that the emerging markets, the ones that have a bit more catching up to do on financial infrastructure, they are looking to the breakthrough technologies because they can move the quickest to adopt it. And so we're seeing that in regions like Africa with the fintechs like Flutterwave and so on. But we're also seeing, more legacy institutions like Shinhan Bank, Standard Bank, so on, also adopting this technology from a non-dollar perspective. And we haven't seen that massive liquidity come into the non-dollar side of the market. And so what excites me, I think, is that Hedera is very well positioned with a global council, one that, provides for financial institutions, based on the Visa model, but one that has a lot of different representation in places like Korea, Japan, Singapore, the US, and so on and so forth. So I'm very excited for next year. I'd like to see these pilots come onto mainnet. Obviously a lot of this stuff is based on wider regulations. So hopefully we'll see, an increase in these sort of regulations coming to fruition, being cemented. And I think there's a bit of a race for this to happen at the moment anyway. We see Japan catching up. We see Singapore leading the way, Dubai leading the way. We've got the UK really, really trying to take that position now as well. So it seems like the external pressures are coming in for a lot of different countries to embrace this technology. And I'd like to think that Hedera is well positioned to capture that for sure.
And one team that we didn't talk about is FPOS and AP Plus. And they went through kind of a pause. They were really interested in DLT and Hedera for a while, but they were going through their merger with AP Plus. So FPOS and AP Plus. And Rob Allen explained that to us recently. Now, Rob Allen, who is our payments guy within the Hedera ecosystem, has been called back to FPOS and AP Plus to continue the work that he was working on earlier. So I think there's going to be some really exciting things to come out of that. And we caught up with Rob to go through Shark Bites. He was actually traveling at the time, but like always, some great insights. So listen in. Welcome back, Rob. Where are you calling from?
Hey, Brandon. Yeah, I'm in Brisbane. I'm in Brisbane Airport. Just landed, got some meetings, so I thought I'd catch up on a few of these easier questions this week as I'm traveling through.
Well, that's some dedication, calling from the lounge in the airport. Impressive.
Wow.
All right,
Absolutely.
So the first one is going to be actually my question. We found out last week that while you were in Singapore, you met with and had a conversation with the CEO of Circle, the issuer of USDC. Is there anything from that conversation you think the community would be interested in?
Oh, well, so Jeremy Allaire and I have had a number of calls over the years for various reasons. USDC has been a token that's been issued on the Hedera network now for a couple of years, I think. And we kind of bumped into each other at the Formula One in Singapore while we were both there. So it wasn't arranged. I was there with Sabrina from the foundation and some of our friends from Tribe in Singapore who've been driving one of our accelerator programs at the foundation. And so Jeremy and I had never met each other in person. There'd been on a number of calls, so we had the opportunity to kind of catch up. Very quickly got to the subject of USDC on Hedera, and I told him about what was going on with Flutterwave, with WorldPay, with a number of the other initiatives that are underway utilizing the USDC issued on Hedera. Particularly interested in the growth of the Hedera DeFi ecosystem and our DEXs, so we discussed that. And both recognized that we needed to kind of drive more liquidity onto Hedera, and that's done through utility. So these great real-world payments and decentralized finance use cases, do that job. I told him a little bit about some of the things we were doing on the governing council and some of the things that are as yet kind of under wraps, and he was super excited. So there's no real alpha there. There's no kind of details other than that to share with the community. Other than we are fully engaged with ecosystem partners. Circle are an ecosystem partner, and we're all very excited about what is to come.
Well, I'm impressed with what Circle is doing. I know Jeremy is a great ambassador for the entire space, so the fact that you have good connections with him is certainly a positive. So next up, we have one from NASA who asked, when do you expect a full governing council, Rob?
This is the perennial question, isn't it?
It is.
And the perennial answer is actually when the time is right. We're not rushing to fill the council. The membership committee, of which there was one sat the other night, but at 1 a.m. my time, which I was on, are very considered about the candidates that are in the pipeline and being presented into the governing council. As you know, there's a committee stage, usually sponsored by another governing council member or by the foundation or the association, or any part of the ecosystem can present, but they're sponsored through by a governing council member. They're truly considered. There's lots of Q&A. We love to see the use cases, so we kind of dig into those. And then once through the committee stage, they get presented to the governing council to vote. And there's a reason why there's that controlled approach. We have another 10 seats to fill. We have a number of sectors that are as yet underrepresented or not represented. So the difference, and I think as Mant said, maybe 2 years ago, between 29 and 39 is actually diminishing returns. So we can take our time to ensure that we have the absolutely right candidates. As I alluded to a few weeks ago, there's some great candidates, and I've been very impressed. Now I'm back on the governing council to see what has been happening in the background since I was last there. So the community shouldn't worry about time to fill the council. My concerns are, well, it's not a concern. Where I think we should be focusing is in not just the first use case for each of the governing council members, but every other use case. So the multiples, the added value that they get from a variety of use cases on Hedera, and getting that true world adoption across the governing council and their peers in industry activated and running at full pace. It'll be another year or two, I think, before we fully fill the council, and I think that's fine.
Well, I think we've hit critical mass, which, of expertise and everything else to properly govern the network. So NASA had another observation. They said the testnet is on fire with 10K plus TPS. Are they expected to migrate to mainnet? This is a good opportunity to kind of explain how we should interpret throughput and TPS that we see on testnet.
I think it's a good indicator. I don't think it indicates the time to production. A lot of projects in that test phase are pushing the limits. So you can run at peak in testnet to demonstrate capability and capacity in a way that may not actually match the use case that you're running, if that makes sense, which may go in peaks and troughs, or the different use cases may drive different TPS. However, there are a number of high throughput use cases coming down the track, and I'm sure they're testing in testnet. So I would be very surprised if that 10,000 wasn't translated into mainnet, in due course, and then some. So I think whether or not it's those actual projects that are currently in testnet translate directly into mainnet, or whether there are others that kind of make up that TPS. I don't know. And then, as we often say, TPS is a catch-all. There are lots of different types of transaction that run, which generate different revenues for the network. And so the use cases that are higher revenue generating tend to be lower TPS, other than in peaks and troughs, like account creation, for example. So the one number hides a lot of nuance and complexity, but it's a great metric to have. And I'm delighted that the community is focused on those areas and amplifying across the socials as well. Right? I mean, it's something that catches attention from other layer ones, and now we've got ChainSpect as well as all the other tools that demonstrate this TPS. It opens the door to talk about the story, the narrative, the nuance, and the complexity, which isn't always easy to get across on X and other socials.
And TPS, it proves scale. It proves that we can handle it. But I do think that revenue is the most important thing for sustainability. Now, the last community question says, question for Rob. Would be nice if Avery Dennison could be more vocal about Atma, with more interviews on YouTube and shout it from the rooftops. Are they under the radar with Atma because of competitors, or are there other reasons why they aren't vocal about it?
I can't talk to what Avery Dennison's communications policy is, but I have seen a lot in the public domain from Max Winograd and Avery Dennison in terms of interviews. So, you don't have to shout it from the rooftops every single day. You just demonstrate what you're doing, right? This is the business. Of course, the new capability that the Atma.io product cloud brings to the ecosystem is massive. And we all talk about it all the time. And Avery Dennison and Atma have addressed the Hedera network as being the key enabler for that. So I'm not sure that it would add too much value if they shouted from the rooftops every week. So, who knows? When they hit another benchmark, when they create a new reason to talk about it, then I'm sure they will.
Well, the main thing is they want to communicate it to their customers. So, Rob, who are their customers?
Their customers are, well, the users of the Atma.io product cloud. So the big brands, the manufacturers. I don't know that I can name any names, but they are the big brands, right? Those don't care about what network they're using. They don't care about what database you use or what cloud-based infrastructure you use. Just that you're delivering a service that benefits and enhances the profitability or the capability that the customer is seeking to take to market. So, we're layers and layers down of and we all are very passionate and evangelistic about the Hedera network, but from a brand customer perspective, they don't need to know, which is why Atma should be evangelizing their services, their capability to their customers, and not necessarily the components of their success, which are there for everyone to see if you want to dig a little.
Well, Rob, we certainly appreciate you coming on here every week, week in and week out, from all kinds of different locations to communicate with us. Thanks to everybody who's asking questions. We do have a pretty good queue going at this point, but still drop your questions down there in the comments and we'll make sure they get in line. Rob, thank you as always, and we'll see you next week.
My pleasure. Hopefully a little longer next week. Cheers, Brandon. Bye.
So today we kicked off COP28 for the Sustainable Impact Fund and the wider Hedera Guardian ecosystem. And we really are there in full force this year. We've got countless talks, we've got countless side events, countless events, all around the Hedera Guardian, all around DMRV, all around the overall thesis, which is bringing the balance sheet of the planet to the public ledger. And so kicking off that this morning at the UN, at the Digital Innovation Pavilion, we had the Envision blockchain team talking on their first panel of the day, which was the open source Guardian, next generation of digital methodologies for emissions, measurements, and carbon markets. And in that audience, as partners, we've got the Linux Foundation, we've got Visa, we've got Context Labs, the Climate Change Coalition, Evercity, who are part of the Guardian, KPMG, and a lot more to come over the coming days. So that really catapulted us in. That's only going to keep going. But yesterday we saw that EDF Official, the biggest energy producer in France, one of the biggest energy producers in the world, came out with their own press that they had delivered this first pilot, this proof of concept, on the Hedera Guardian for renewable energy certificates. And as we know, carbon credits are key for us reaching net zero, which is a founding promise of COP28, but so are renewable energy certificates. And both of these markets have their flaws. They have things like issues like double spending. They have issues like, data input that's put in manually being incorrect. There's a lot of inefficiencies. But as we know, the Hedera Guardian is the best tech for helping solve these inefficiencies. We've seen the Sustainable Impact Fund consult Gold Standard, who are a leading carbon registry. We've seen them consult Vera. We've seen them even consult the White House, UNF, CCC, and so on. And the founding conclusion each time is that DMRV and the Hedera Guardian are breakthrough tech to make these markets more efficient. So what better way to start that than with EDF coming out with their paper? And what better way to start that than the Digital Innovation Pavilion? And we're only going to see much more of that this week, with announcements to come, events to come, and so on. So very exciting week, definitely, and everyone keep their eyes on the Foundation Twitter.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what we come out from that next week. I'm sure we're going to have weeks of information to put out on that, because Hedera really, as you said, they are so broad in this space. They're putting us so far ahead in what will be a multi-trillion-dollar market. A huge shout out to Wes and all the other teams that are working in that space. But that one's kind of top down, right? It's coming from the UN, and we're making sure that we have everything in place to make sure we can meet the needs there. But we also have a great team that's grassroots up, and that's that's the HBAR Foundry. They have been doing some really good town halls, and they just keep grinding forward with everybody that's building in the space. They caught up with Andrew Aitken. He's our new chief open source officer, and it was an hour-long interview. Huge shout out to Ken. Now, Ken was doing a great job with his interview. Now, you won't see him too much here actually interviewing because I clipped it down really far to make sure we just caught the highlights, but everybody has to go make sure you catch the entire thing over on the HBAR Foundry. But in the meantime, here's a short clip.
I was head of open source at Wipro, which is one of the large global systems integrators. And internally, our council member at the time, and Wipro's a council member of Hedera, at the time, our council member reached out to me and said, Hedera is trying to develop their open source strategy. Do you think you might be able to help them out? And that's something I've been doing for over 2 decades now, is developing open source strategy for a variety of different types of organizations. So I said, sure. And so that's how I was brought in through our council relationship to participate on the open source task force with you, Ken, and others, and had an opportunity to spend a few hours a week here and there, as you know, working on that strategy. But as it got closer towards earlier this year, as the strategy began to get ready to be implemented, they wanted me to help with defining the role of chief open source officer, help refer a number of candidates, which I did so. And at that time was not considering joining Hedera. It was at the Santa Clara Council member meeting in June of this year, I think July, that I was invited to participate. I remember sitting in this room in the Google auditorium. They were kind enough to host the council meeting. Sitting in this room with 60, 70 other people, just frankly, it was, wow, these are some really, really smart people, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on. And so I thought about it, and I was clear. I said, I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of this. So that day, I actually reached out to Brett, the chair and president, and a couple of the board members that I had been working with, and said, I want to put my hat in the ring. And I did. And obviously, here I am. And it's always nice. I didn't realize it at the time, but it's always nice to actually have written your own job description. I'd like to start by saying, yeah, it sounds like a really grandiose title. Just don't worry, I don't take myself too seriously. But I do take the role seriously. So, and let me set the context a little bit by giving a brief history here. Some of the members, some of the participants on the call may be aware of the history, some may not be. So it was almost 2 years ago that Hedera Hashgraph LLC and the council acquired the IP rights to Hashgraph itself, right? Subsequent to that, they made the determination about a little over a year and a half ago, that they were going to open source all of the IP, which they then went and did under the Apache license. That's when we got involved and started working on the strategy, and they needed someone who had the background and expertise to help them implement the council strategy. And so that's really what my role is to and I have a lot of background in this whole open source foundation community. For those of you who may be familiar with the Linux Foundation, I was actually brought in around 20 years ago to help Jim Zemlin craft the initial strategy for the Linux Foundation. And since then, I've advised on a number of other foundations. I've been on the boards and advisory, board representative advisory board. So I've seen of a number of foundations. So I've seen a lot of what works and what doesn't work. And I think that was part of the reason that they decided to bring me on board. And so that's really my role, is to take make recommendations to the council after getting input from the community. I want to be really clear about that. I'm not doing this in a vacuum, right? I am reaching out to different elements, different parts of the ecosystem. I am reaching out to my own expert community. I am working closely with SpheraWorld, obviously a key part of our the community, and taking their input, kind of stewing that with my own expertise and making some recommendations to the council. They then will give me the feedback. Believe me, they're very comfortable giving me direct feedback. Let's just say that. So I'll take their feedback and then implement the agreed upon strategy. So that's really what my role is. It has to be done with the full support of the council, because back to your point about the distributed nature of Hedera, the governance model and the ecosystem, our formal guidance comes from the council. And I have to say, Ken, when I was first getting familiar with this and when we were working on the open source strategy, and I was told that there are 29 council members that help make decisions. I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me. That's never going to work. It's going to take us years to get anything
Decision
done.
by committee.
Yeah, I was really, really skeptical. And of course, there's a board elected by the council. But that was one of my big concerns getting involved here, because I've been a part of some foundations that had 15 to 20 governing members, and those were cluster you-know-whats. But I'm really so impressed about how it runs. Yes, we can't make a decision tomorrow. That's reality, right? Yeah. But that's okay, because we have a lot of really, really smart and engaged council members. We have an incredible board that I'm truly impressed with. And so that's a part of really what helped me overcome my concerns about having a distributed governance model, was getting to know the people and understand their commitment to being successful here.
That's one of the things that I'm so impressed with, and obviously Andrew is impressed with as well. How many smart people there are working in the space. Now, he was just talking about the Hedera Governing Council, but I'm talking about the entire Hedera space. There are so many talented teams and smart people. Success almost feels inevitable. But we certainly have our challenges as well. We're getting a lot of FUD in the space. We're getting a lot of pushback. I think that's showing our success. But Zep, you were dealing with some FUD this week, and I've been dealing with it as well. But what's your experience been?
Awful. Oh man,
I thrive on it. I love it.
I'm so exhausted at this point. But no, it happens, daily. It happens, but I think you're a lot more level-headed than me when you go into these things. You're very good at being patient. I think I've got to the end of my tether, so I need a Christmas break, and then do a bit of meditation or something, whatever people do to chill out, and then I'll come back with a vendetta. But there was a guy called Mert who ruined my dinner, I must say. I went out for a very nice dinner on my own, and then I stumbled across Mert who gave me indigestion and very much ruined it. But he was, there's some people, I think, that are willing to converse, and there's some people that really aren't. And Mert, from the get-go, wasn't interested. He's a founder within the Solana ecosystem. He's pretty big over there. He does a lot over there. He's not interested in other chains. But I think the reason I did comment is because he was clearly posting misinformation. I think when someone's just talking about their chain, you don't want to go in and go, oh, Hedera is bad or anything like that, because all that does is breed animosity. But the reason I did comment was purely to just tell him that what he was saying was wrong. And also, I think even if he wasn't going to listen, I'd like to think that people in the comments were. That's how I've met a lot of people in this industry, is commenting. People see it, follow me, I follow them back, kind of thing. So there's even an element of networking that goes on within that. But I think I don't think I led by example this time. I can't lie. I was a bit cutthroat with him, which I'm not going to do next time, because I've said in the past that the main way to really win people over is to engage in debates, not be sassy, not be sort of a tool sort of at them. And I just lost my patience a bit. But I think at the end of the day, some people are going to listen, some people aren't. We need to find the people and engage with the people that are going to listen, but always make sure that it's done in a respectful manner, and then hopefully they'll be curious enough to check out the ecosystem.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is important to keep a level head. Normally we don't do this. We try not to talk about the other networks too much, but I think it is warranted because we have been getting an awful lot of pushback. I do think that Rob Allen talked about last week how we kind of have that integrity North Star, the moral North Star that our founders set. And for the most part, I think we follow that. We followed that lead in the space, and we try to maintain a high level of integrity. I will say that Solana has had some issues in that department. I mean, there was a huge story. Now, this isn't the Solana team themselves, but they seem like they're involved with everything. One of their big DeFi platforms had a huge scandal around it where they were misrepresenting the amount of TVL on their network to the tune of billions of dollars. And according to this CoinDesk story, it actually was a big reason for the run up. They've had a lot of VCs, venture capitalists in the space that are really chatty. They're talking their books. One of the biggest ones was Sam Bankman-Fried. So again, adjacent to Solana, somebody who's not very savory. I wasn't really impressed with how Solana misrepresented their transactions. That's caused a lot of issues for us. Now, they were counting the information traded between the different nodes as transactions. And of course, Hedera, if we counted every gossip between our nodes, we would have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of transactions. But those aren't real transactions. Now, we had a good conversation with CoinSpect about how they're trying to set standards. But to me, it seems like Solana is willing to do some unsavory things, at least their ecosystem, to kind of put themselves on a pedestal. Now, I think that can cause issues in the future if they can't live up to everything that they want to do. Now, here's an example. Now, this one is with Stellar. I had a conversation a while back with Ryan from the AdStacks team who had an experience with Stellar. Now, this is no bash on Stellar, but at the time, they were claiming that they could process 1,000 transactions per second. Now, AdStacks wanted to put a few dozen transactions per second on the network, and this was the result.
Could we do it? No, the technology still doesn't exist. So then we carried on going, and eventually we heard about Hedera. So, oh, this is fantastic. This is everything we need, but it wasn't ready. So, okay, we'll just wait. So we were waiting and waiting. We said, well, we'll build a proof of concept. We built a proof of concept on Stellar, and it worked okay. We had problems with unpredictable fees, but the main thing is we turned it on, and somebody who worked there at the time was said, "Oh my God, you can't do this many transactions per second," and they turned us off. So that was
they turned you off from a public network.
Yeah, we were blocked off from accessing the nodes.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, every time we try and go on another node, they would turn us off because they said you're killing the network. I was like, okay, well, this is what you wanted, right? You wanted developers to use your technology, but obviously not at that scale at the time. You know, things might be different for them now.
Sure. So Zeb, the important thing here is, I know we talk about Hedera's transaction volume a lot, and everybody says, well, you know, Atmaio got a grant or something along those lines, and they try to downplay that. But it is, again, I'm going to say this again, it's proving the scale of Hedera. I don't think that Solana, the team at Solana, has any problem spoofing transactions. Now, I'm not saying not real transactions, but transactions that maybe aren't serving a commercial purpose, as we see with Atmaio, to get their numbers up. You know, they're only at 500 transactions per second. That's still a fair amount. I'm not sure what's generating those, but I think if they could push up to 2,500 and pass Hedera by spoofing real transactions, I think that they would. So I think there's a reason that they aren't doing that. So until they prove that they can actually handle the scale that Hedera is proving right now, I think that they're going to struggle. I think that's what we've seen in the past when they've actually pushed their network. It actually fails. And I don't think that they've added anything significant to the network that would prevent that from happening. I know they say they have, but until they actually can do it in the real world, I'm not going to go any further with it. All right, so the best thing we have to combat FUD is our great community. And I caught up with Tatsuaki. I already talked about him last week. I caught up with him in an interview. I do want to say one thing. It seems like he knows what he's doing. He knows how to be professional. And I know that's what we attract in our space. People that are professional. But you have to be careful when dealing with enterprises, potential council members, things like that. Make sure that if you aren't affiliated with somebody like the HBAR Foundation or Hedera or SpheraWorld Labs, that you make that clear, that I'm just an enthusiast in the space or something along those lines, to make sure that you're representing yourself and representing Hedera correctly. If they don't know, they might give you information that might be covered under an NDA or something along those lines. But I think what Tatsuaki is doing is great. I think he's shaking things up. I think he's moving things forward for us. So I wanted to hear what he had to say. So listen in. To start off, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and how you got involved in the Hedera community?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of years ago, I was working at Oracle. I was very young. I was only 18. And I had this colleague in San Francisco. I was in the Amsterdam office. His name was Wes Geisenberger. And he was kind of leading the emerging tech teams at Oracle and a lot of the initiatives around blockchain, AI, and IoT, also smart cities. And this guy was amazing. He taught me all about emerging tech. And later on, he moved to Hedera. So that's where he introduced me to Hedera, and I got to learn a lot about the core network. Back then, it was way different than what it is now with all of the capabilities, but it really inspired me and it gave me a new paradigm to think about. And yeah, over the years, I became more and more involved. Also started investing heavily into HBAR. And yeah, I'm doing my best to keep up the spirit of the network, try to grow it as much as I can, and do as much as I can from the outside.
Yeah, so at one point you mentioned that you had been in the community since 2019. So you've been in the Hedera community from the beginning, but have been relatively quiet to this point. What's motivated you to become so vocal and driven at this point?
Yeah, so, I genuinely think that a lot of other networks are beating Hedera on noise, especially on social media. So you see that there is a lot of tweets about Solana, Ethereum, and, all sorts of other chains, but they usually do not have a lot of substance. So when I started tweeting, I genuinely thought, okay, what if we could actually talk some substance and create some hype with substance? And so really detail different use cases and ideas that either, startups could do or even governing council members could implement. And that found some resonance. I found that pretty cool. And on the other side, with enterprises, I've been trying to, pitch Hedera to a lot of different people for quite a long time now. But now, finally, I do have some more channels to actually work together with people at the HBAR Foundation to actually, pursue some of these things on a more professional level. So I think some of that attention that came through Twitter is helping on the professional side of things, of actually trying to grow the network, of either, getting new governing council members or finding enterprises to simply deploy use cases on Hedera.
Well, I think we can peel some of that back with this next question. What are your personal goals for Hedera, and how do you plan personally to help accomplish those goals?
Sure. So, mainly what I think about a lot is my interactions with different enterprises, even enterprises that are on the governing council. So sometimes these companies are extremely huge. They've got hundreds of thousands of employees. And what I noticed in the case of Deutsche Telekom, their German team started posting a lot about Polkadot on LinkedIn. And I became really upset. I messaged them and I started having conversations with them about Hedera, and they weren't really aware of Hedera and the capabilities of the network. So, I started creating that engagement, try to build some education around Hedera, even with governing council members. So I think what I like to do is create engagement on an enterprise and government level to actually create use cases on the network that are then implemented with existing governing council members, enterprises, but I also have quite a deep network. So I like to use that to expand the governing council, and hopefully we'll be successful with at least one or two of them. That would be kind of a goal for me to, somehow do my part when it comes to growing Hedera from the outside. And yeah, that would be my primary goal, just to, try to grow Hedera in every way possible. I think retail growth is more challenging, to try to really get retail users to become really enthusiastic about Hedera. And I really don't think that should be the primary goal of a network either. It should be the technologies that are built on top of Hedera that people use in their everyday lives. Sometimes they might not even know that they're using Hedera, interacting with HCS or HTS. I think that will be what real retail adoption really means. It's when enterprises and startups implement HTS or HCS or all the other beautiful things you can do on the Hedera network into their applications, and then their user base becomes actual users of that. I don't think retail means people tweeting GM every day. I think it's more about actually people using it and interacting with the network, even if they don't know about it.
So we're seeing, in use cases like payments and consumer engagement, social media, things like that, we're seeing that kind of stuff where it is kind of running behind the scenes. But what are some of your favorite use cases?
So I think Atma.io is probably one of the coolest things we have. It's billions of items in a supply chain that every second about 2,200 of them get recorded on the Hedera network. I think that's a really big use case in the supply chain. But the opportunities for implementation of DLT into pretty much every aspect of our lives are massive, from fractional ownership of real estate down to the way you identify yourself, to payments, especially in developing countries. I believe that a lot of great things can be done with DLT to actually empower people, give them power back, and actually help them advance in society. So I'm a great fan of DLT from a societal perspective, but also from all of the possibilities it unlocks, right? So from being able to just loan someone some money to being able to invest into a piece of a property instead of taking on a huge loan and then having to pay that back over 40 years, you can just buy a piece of a property. These are things that are only possible with DLT. Specifically with Hedera, a wide array of new use cases are unlocked due to the scalability that this technology has. With HCS, developers can implement decentralized consensus into traditional applications that don't even use smart contracts for anything. So that's why I'm super enthusiastic for regarding Hedera. Then on the governance side as well, I believe a network shouldn't be controlled by the founders or the richest members of the network. I think the governing council is the best implementation of a democratic model. So I'm very enthusiastic about a lot of different things that can be done with DLT. So it's hard to, put my finger on one thing. But as an investor, as someone who's really passionate about technology, for me, there is only one answer, and that's Hedera.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Real quick, is there anything else you'd like to pass on before we let you go?
Yeah, maybe just, I think as a community, we need to really pull together and understand all of the different resources we can offer to the network and find a way to really leverage every individual in this network, from holders, investors, to developers, to ecosystem companies, and really find a better way of bringing everyone together to collaborate, to advance things forward. I think if we, take 2024 as, the year of understanding who the community is and how we can supercharge them to supercharge Hedera, I think that could be a very, very good year for all of us.
I agree. I really appreciate everything you're doing. I'm glad that you got a little bit more active, and thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So moving over to the MENA region, we know that within UAE, within Dubai, within MENA, they are really laser set focused on becoming sports hubs. We've seen it with golf, we've seen it with F1, we're seeing it with football. They want to become global leaders in the sports industry. And what better example than this, than the new application coming out on Hedera called SpheraWorld. They've teamed up with Kura as marketing partners. Kura, the biggest sports media platform in the MENA region by active people looking into the website each month. So a massive, massive fan base. And they've teamed up with SpheraWorld on this sort of new consumer engagement football experience. NFTs, tokens, gaming, this kind of thing. And what really excites me, I think, is that it's part of this sort of sports-fi narrative. You know, we've seen Karate Combat come into Hedera, really start to gain momentum. And I think if we have another sports-fi application that begins to do the same thing, then Hedera will begin to get that reputation as a chain that enables a narrative like SportsFi, and then people will come in and start looking down our token economy and sort of engaging and looking at different things. You know, we've seen it with Avalanche right now. You know, big narrative on Avalanche for gaming. People see Avalanche do a 200%, whatever it is. They think, oh, I've missed the ship on Avalanche, but how can I get exposed to the ecosystem? I'm going to look down the funnel, see the tokens on their layer one that are building within gaming. And then the same thing happens. They go up 3x, 4x. And so I think if Hedera can start getting narratives like this, like SportsFi, or if it's decentralized physical infrastructure like we're seeing with Neuron, or real-world asset tokenization, that gives us credibility. That gives our token economy credibility. And then that gets the excitement coming in. Again, not financial advice, but exciting to see SpheraWorld on board, launching their INO, initial NFT offering with Headstarter. And then as part of that, you'll get your first SPT tokens, which are going to be a new HTS token within the ecosystem. So exciting times, new HTS token, hopefully a big application. They've at least got massive marketing support from Kura, and excited to see where they take us for SportsFi.
Well, in that interview that I did with him last week, they certainly have some exciting stuff going on. I'm excited about some of the things that they have going on in NFTs. They're looking at a lot of different verticals within the NFT space. And we've actually got a new tool within the Hedera ecosystem coming with XP Network. Now, we talked about them. They're going to allow you to take NFTs that are created within the Hedera ecosystem to any other chain and vice versa. So you're going to be able to leverage the strength of pretty much every single network. And I caught up with Ruby. He is one of the co-founders over there at XP Network to explain. Ruby, what you're doing has been done with fungible tokens, but it seems pretty unique in the NFT space. So first, can you explain what XP Network is?
Right, Brandon. So XP Network is an NFT multi-chain bridge. What we are offering to the market right now is a way for projects to easily become multi-chain, right? It's so simple and so easy. Anybody can just pick up the XP Network bridge and start transferring NFTs and become multi-chain. Other possibilities that we also offer projects is if you are a dApp, you can take our XPNet.js API. You can easily implement it, right? We are using it in our own UI. We're using our own API in our own UI. Developers can take it. It's very, very simple, very easy. You know, NPM install the package and start using it. You can become multi-chain in 5 to 10 minutes. It's very, very simple. We also have the bridge widget, which is a very easy way to implement our bridge in your application, your dApp, your website. It's basically like an editor. You know, you come in, you like Shopify for the bridge, you choose the colors, everything. Very, very simple, plug and play. Poof, you have a bridge, also 5 to 10 minutes. And this is XP Network. We are a way to multi-chain your NFT project.
And it sounds simple enough. So what's actually happening behind the scenes? How is it possible to bridge these assets across networks?
The bridge behind the scenes, what is actually going on there? It's a quite complex process. I'll try to break it down and make it very, very simple. So the bridge is a smart contract, right? We're currently connected to 35 blockchains. Every chain has a smart contract deployed on it. And our 11 off-chain oracles are listening to these 35 smart contracts. Once a user decides to send an NFT, right, he can either lock it when he's sending it to a chain or burn it when he's returning it to the chain that the NFT was sent from. The oracles receive the event and they basically decode it. They see if it is correct or not. Then once everything is fine, they decide between themselves which oracle will send the transaction. They do an off-chain signature using a signature algorithm that is called Frost. We found it extremely secure, very fast, fits our purpose. And he takes the 11 signatures, he puts it in the destination chain, and he mints or releases the NFT into the user's wallet. This is how it's done.
Yeah, this could be really powerful. So why did you decide to integrate Hedera?
Well, Hedera is one of the biggest blockchains, right, in the market. It has a very, very strong NFT community, active marketplaces. Collections want to move to Hedera to access its users. We're always on the hunt for the biggest blockchains. We contact the guys. We talk to the team. The integration process sometimes is long, right? We encounter non-EVMs and EVMs sometimes, like Hedera, which is an EVM, but there are all of these changes that you guys have made, which are fine, but it takes time to develop it. So we are in connection with the team, checking all of the security issues, everything, every step that we take, we audit it internally and externally. We check it with the team as well to see that the new things that we're integrating, is it fine? Is it not fine? Is there an issue there? Is it not an issue there? With Hedera, it took a bit of time, but it was worth it, right? The NFT community is big, the marketplaces are there. So yeah, this is why we chose Hedera.
Very exciting. So in your opinion, why is XP Network important for the future of Web3?
So currently, every blockchain is like an island, right? They are isolated. You have users in Ethereum, you have users in Hedera, you have users in Solana. Everybody is scattered. There is no connectivity between the chains, right? And there will always be new blockchains, new players in the market, new hype around another chain, new chain here, new chain there, right? There are always going to be new chains. This is something that we don't believe that there will be like a single chain and that's it. You can example it to TV channels, right? There are always going to be new things, new technologies, new players. So we believe that the future of NFT is interoperable, right? We believe that there should be easy connection between wallets and chains, right? The user, he sees the wallet. He doesn't see this. This is the end user, the regular end user. He sees the wallet, and some of the users, they see the chains, right? Not all of them, but the very minor amount of users. So we want users to be able to use the wallets easily, to transfer their assets easily between the chains, so they can access all of the liquidity around all of the chains easily, freely to move between the chains. Like this is how we see the future of the Web3 market. Assets moving freely between chains. Everything is connected.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. Ruby, I really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you for supporting the Hedera network with this integration. And I can't wait to see what happens when NFT creators can leverage the strengths of pretty much every network.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The NFT market is evolving rapidly. We see all kinds of use cases coming to the market every day. Games, art, music, real estate, and much more. Building the future of the NFT market requires overcoming big problems, looping in the right partners, and setting a standard for the future to come. Over the last 6 months, XP Network did just that. The need for digital assets is explored by governments, startups, artists, and all kinds of trailblazers. Right now, we face a siloed market, limiting the reach and potential of what it can truly be. Applications, artists, and all NFT pioneers are forced to a single blockchain architecture, preventing them from reaching a mainstream success. To achieve this unified future, we created the world's most powerful NFT bridge. It is fast, secure, and trusted by all major blockchains. We are on track to connect more than 700 dApps, taking them fully multi-chain. XP Network aims to be at the epicenter of the NFT market, growing in demand and utility along with our partners. Get your NFT dApp or collection up and running on multiple chains faster than you can say chain agnostic.
So Zep, sticking with NFTs, I do want to talk a little bit about Twigital, my company. We allow you to create 3D assets from almost any physical object. And we launched about a month ago. We've been having a lot of fun with people that are interacting with it. And I wanted to put together a few tips and tricks on some of the things people are having some challenges with. So check it out. Hey guys, we understand that Twigital is a new concept, and that comes with some challenges. So we're back to give you a few more pointers. As suggested in the Twigital how-to guide, a turntable that matches a flat matte background is often the best way to capture and create 3D objects that can then be tokenized with Twigital. That said, if you're just getting started, you may not be ready to start laying down money for equipment. We've noticed on the Dragonglass NFT Explorer and from some feedback that while some are having success, others are struggling and creating some funky stuff. Don't worry, we've got your back. You don't need anything but your phone to create some great assets. But here are some additional tips. Take a look on the left. The object that's being captured is sitting directly on a broad table with a uniform color surface. The camera is relatively close, and a few dozen pictures are taken. You can turn the object on its side to capture the bottom, but it's not necessary if you're just learning. Now contrast this to the one on the right. The object that's being captured is on a stand, and the Twigital backend will assume that you're trying to capture that as well. The pictures are taken from further away, and only a few are snapped. As we're waiting for the results, I will say, if you're not familiar with photogrammetry, it is important to choose an easier object at first to ensure early success. Even though, as your skills grow, almost any object can be captured. Easier objects are ones that hold their shape, are not reflective, translucent, or too small. Flat objects can also be difficult unless they're on a stand that you also plan to capture. The color should also contrast with your background. Larger objects can be captured by placing them on the ground, and even fixed objects such as statues can be good candidates as long as you can get pictures from all angles. And here we see the difference. On the left, we captured exactly what we wanted to in good detail. And on the right, well, not so much. Thanks for watching. Thanks for using Twigital. And if you stick with it, you'll gain a new skill that will have limitless potential in the future. All right, so anybody that is using Twigital, you are more than welcome to reach out to us on X. You can reach out to us on our Discord server. We love to have those conversations for people that are using this application that's new, not just within the Hedera ecosystem, but all of Web3. All right, Zep, so you have something you wanted to bring up about JoGet. Do you have any information on that?
So JoGet are the low-code/no-code developer platform on the Hedera network. They have something called the Hashgraph Application Studio, which basically makes developing on Hedera as simple as possible. It abstracts away the need for, complex coding and makes it all a lot more sort of visually based, drag and dropping, this kind of thing. And they've just integrated now generative AI tooling to really make that even more efficient. This generative AI, you can basically prompt what you want your application to look like, and it will sort of make that sort of skeleton for you, that app skeleton, so that you can get into the really juicy bit, which is, figuring out how to leverage the Hedera to get your end goal, how to solve real world issues to drive real world value. So that's there. It's now been turbocharged by this AI integration. And so if you are, someone that's perhaps an entrepreneur with an idea, but doesn't necessarily have that coding skill, then this could be a really good, step in the right direction for you.
It's really important infrastructure for our space. The last thing that I want to cover before we get into network analysis is Shayne going to the TIE and presenting in front of the New York Stock Exchange. I think this was really critical for us to make these kind of moves. And Shayne did, of course, a great job representing us. So I caught some highlights and you can check them out.
What are we doing at Hedera to bring real-world assets on chain? So blockchain, probably obvious, it's not a buzzword anymore. It is something that many, many organizations are starting to use. We are unique in that we're a distributed ledger technology, which affords us a few things that are pretty important that I'll talk about towards the end, but I'll just mention and highlight here. One is we're incredibly secure. We've got incredible scale, and then all of our transaction fees are denominated and fixed to the US dollar, which we don't worry about congestion and fluctuating gas fees, et cetera. If you're building on top of Hedera, what your costs are going to be based on the demand and utilization of the application that you're using. So as you think about, we believe that, DLT is an advantage for many organizations that are building. And so we're going to talk specifically about real use cases solving real problems on chain today. On-chain is the new online. So as we think about what does that really mean in bringing things on-chain, there are a set of different technologies, set of different analytics. But at the end of the day, everything remains, how am I growing revenue and market share, or how am I reducing costs and speeding up the way that I do business? So this is one, Aberdeen. Aberdeen is a large hedge fund, $500 billion of assets under management based out of the UK. that have tokenized their money market fund. Now, why are they doing this? A lot of tokenization projects are based on democratizing what they're doing to fractionalize and give other investors besides the large institutions an opportunity to participate. That's certainly one of the reasons that they did this. So they not only tokenized their money market fund, but they tokenized the assets in the fund, and then they put them on a regulated exchange called Archax, which has a multiple amount of capabilities. One, tokenization, it happens to be an exchange, and it's a custodian, so that brokers and investors can access their technology and specifically the securities and the assets that are running on Hedera. So this helps with price discovery. So if you're a large institution, the benefit to you is that you've got transparent pricing so that when you can determine when and how you want to make that trade. A lot of liquidity, a lot of capabilities for both the small investor, private investor, who typically doesn't have the ability to write the same check size that larger institutions have. And so this idea of privileged access that the larger institutions have held on to is no longer the case with something that Aberdeen is doing. Their vision not only is the money market fund, but to tokenize their real estate assets as well, along with bonds. And so we're seeing more and more of these types of use cases running on the network. The second is our stablecoin studio. So at Token 2049 in Singapore, we announced Stablecoin Studio. There are multiple organizations that are building stablecoins. We wanted to make it really, really easy to do that. To illustrate that, I want to talk about another use case. So Shinhan Bank, with a Korean-backed stablecoin, has built and tokenized this on Hedera. And it was really for international remittance. And so some of the things that they were trying to challenge. Currently, slow processing times, the transaction fees were expensive. I've got a summary slide that shows that the transaction fees are $30 plus per transaction. And when you're talking about the number of transactions and billions of dollars, that's a lot of money. Limited hours of operation, it only was Monday through Friday. Lack of system standardization, cost of integration. It was a $50 billion global market that needed a better solution. So what they did was they did a proof of concept leveraging Hedera and Stablecoin Studio to improve processing time, improve the transparency, integrity of the system, ultimately resulting in an optimized experience that reduced processing time from days to minutes. And so when you think about today, settlements happening, trades happening, that takes a lot of resources. It's non-standard systems, and it takes a lot of time, resulting in a ton of money lost and a lot of inefficiency. They leveraged Hedera Stablecoin Studio so that they could get to real-time settlements. FX integration was real-time, along with doing a multi-bank POC, Shinhan Bank, along with a couple of other banks. EVM compatibility. So this is one of the things you may have never heard about Hedera, but we realized that there are other chains that people are building on. And so we needed to become EVM compatible. So if you wanted to issue an ERC20 token, you could do that natively on Hedera. So we're not only EVM compatible, but we have moved towards EVM equivalents. And we should have EVM equivalents in the next 6 months, which we're pretty excited about. 24-hour operation time, so an always-on type of business. So here's some numbers in the achievements. It went from traditional banking hours to 24/7, 1 to 10 days to 2.5 seconds. One of the things about Hedera's technology is finality. And so finality for us is in the 2.5 to 3 second time frame. So when you think about a real-time business, even if it's not high-frequency trading, you still want to be able to have finality in a matter of seconds as opposed to minutes, or the fear that they're going to roll back the transaction. Real-time traceability, it's just simply supported by design. Formerly, settlement happened in USD. Now it doesn't matter. It can happen in whatever token gets remitted. And look at the charges, the fees associated to it. Intermediary fees of 20 to 30 bucks. TTF fees of $0 to $6, transfer fees of anywhere from $3 to $38, and on Hedera, a 5-cent transaction fee for all of this. So when you think about the volume and scale of organizations like Shinhan, just one use case, running on Hedera a fraction of the cost. So FIS WorldPay on Hedera has created a proof of reserve. If you're leveraging the stablecoin studio, you can verify before you create N+1 stablecoins that the collateral is in your bank account to improve or to ensure the ratio that you've defined that you've needed, typically 1-to-1. So next is Drop. Drop is a micropayments platform that was recently listed as a vendor for FedNow to settle transactions. Drop's focus, they've built on Hedera, has typically been micropayments, specializing in transactions under $10. So some of which, there's a lot of transactions that we do day in and day out that are under $10, but they're also trying to shift the paradigm in that, let's say, for example, you want to read a book. And that book is, 500 pages long and it's $40. I don't necessarily want to pay for that because I don't know if I'm going to like the book. I know my friend said that the book is incredible, but I don't know if I'm going to like the book. Wouldn't it be cool if you could pay per page? And so what they're doing is they're working with some vendors to implement this kind of pay per use so that maybe 40 pages in, I can decide, yeah, you know what, it's worth $40. Now I'll buy it, but I've only spent $5 to get there. FedNow is allowing them to use them as a service provider for the speed, for the micropayments, and they're really trying to upend whether you're using USDC, whether you're using USD, whether you're using the native token of Hedera, which is HBAR, having multiple ways to engage with this unique technology. So payment providers, pay as a bank, including calling their API, there are multiple ways to work with companies like Drop. We have one of our governing council members that has created something called atma.io, atma.io, which is the Connected Products Cloud. This is tracking and tracing all of the products for their customers in terms of how they get created and what was the carbon footprint in creating that good or service. And then they can go buy carbon offsets to make sure that creating, let's say it's an apparel company, creating that shirt, that blouse, that pair of pants, that shoe was absolutely something that did not have an impact on the planet. This is happening more and more and resulting in billions and billions of IoT devices being tracked and traced as a result of that.
All right, so thanks to Shayne for representing us up there in New York. And with that, let's get into some network analysis. So we had a couple dips this week in throughput, but spent most of the week averaging 2,200 TPS, which allowed us to process 1.2 billion transactions in a single week, with a max TPS of 8,600. We are still maintaining under a 3.5 second time to finality, and the spike in account creation that we saw at the end of last week continued, and we saw an impressive 109,000 accounts added to the Hedera mainnet over the past 7 days. Moving down to our fungible tokens, the Diamond Standard token Bitcarbon, which is in beta, is in the top spot. Zenny Travel's Xbucks is in number 2. I love our meme coins, but I do like to see these tokens associated with serious businesses in the top spots. Then we see Wrapped HBAR, Karate, Energy Trade Token, the meme coin Zero, Sauce, Dovu, and 2 versions of USDC to round out the top 10. So Zeb, do you have any thoughts on what's going on in our fungible tokens?
Yeah, I think there's renewed energy. We've seen Karate Combat or Karate in the last month, I think, do 200%. We saw Galaxy do something similar last month and still up, 100% on the month. There are exciting opportunities, of course, not financial advice, but within our own ecosystem. We've got some really high caliber applications that do have their own tokens, that do have their own marketing budgets, and do have their own strategy for, breaking out into the wider ecosystems, getting that extra liquidity and bridging them over. And I think Calyx and Karate are 2 very good examples of that. Full disclosure, I own both, but I think that's what they've done. They've understood Web3 marketing. They've understood the need for multi-chain or bridging or at least attracting other communities. They've done a great job of that, and I'd like to think that the more they do that, the more applications that we have doing that, the more energy will happen in our HTS ecosystem, and I like to think that we're at the start of that. So exciting opportunities here, and yeah, definitely a lot of projects to keep an eye on.
Yeah, not surprisingly, the Galaxy token did well after they showed up on CNBC. It had a little bit of a pullback, but for the most part, it had a good few weeks. Karate, I know the last time I was involved with their up-only gaming for their last fight, which was less than a month ago, it had a 5 handle. It was between 5 and 6 cents. Now it's in the upper teens. They're really gearing up for their next event, the Karate Combat 43, and we're going to have a lot more coverage of that going into the next couple weeks. All right, so moving down to our NFTs, Blade Wallet Loyalty Card is in the top spot, followed by 2 Saucer Swap Liquidity Provider NFTs, and then one I need to do some research on called The Times. We have Road Code Access, a Karate Combat themed Karateka card, 0 Pixels, Shroomies, the Gaming Metaverse Earthlings Land NFT, and H Barbarians The Lost is in the 10th spot. If anyone has any information on that last one, please let me know. So Zeb, do you have any thoughts on NFTs this week?
Yeah, so Dead Pixels came out with a big announcement, which was that all remaining ghost mints, i.e. all the dead pixels that are left to go into circulation, will be sort of given to existing holders. Each existing ghost will be eligible to 1 mint. So I own 5 or 6 dead pixels, I think. I'm like a dead pixels whale, which means I'll have access to 12 mints, I think. That's how that is. So this is a way for them to really get everything into circulation, have that minting story come to a draw, and allow them to really sort of move into the next episode of Dead Pixels, which I'm really excited to see. So definitely worth going checking out their Discord, checking out the pinned tweets on their Twitter, and just getting up to speed with everything that's happening over there.
And I own a Dead Pixel myself, so I'd love to see success there. And with that, we'll get into some DeFi. Taking a look at DeFi Llama, not including state or liquid staking, the total value locked in the Hedera DeFi ecosystem is just over $39 million. Saucer Swap holds $36.4 million and HellSwap holds $2.9 million. As you can see, HellSwap has taken a decent hit in the last month, down 24% to the benefit of Saucer Swap. Taking a look at the returns on Saucer Swap's popular trading pairs, HBAR is at 4.6%, 23% on HBAR Sauce, 19% on HBAR USDC version 1, 56% on HBAR USDC version 2, 14% on HBAR Galaxy, and 39% on HBAR Karate. Over on HelloSwap, HBAR is at 3.8%, 99% on HBAR Heli, 14% on HBAR USDC, and 19% on HBAR Karate. Moving over to the crypto and HBAR markets, Bitcoin is up 2.5% on the day and on the week. HBAR is up 2% on the day, but down 2% on the week. We also tested 6 cents this week, so that appears to be support, and I'm looking at 6.8 cents for resistance. All right, Zeb, that's pretty much all we have. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, I think, as we've seen throughout this year, Hedera is solving real-world issues to drive real-world value. There's so much going on in our ecosystem, almost too much to keep up with, as we've mentioned time and time again. We've got the banking the bankless narrative, which isn't just a narrative, but really, really happening before our eyes on Hedera. And then we've got the consumer engagement with Karate Combat, with Galaxy, with SpheraWorld that's coming in. And then we've got, of course, the Refi, sustainability, climate finance ecosystem. That market is projected at multi-trillion, and it needs renovation, for want of a better word, and the Guardian is there to provide that new breakthrough technology to modernize it. And COP28 is our prime place to showcase that. We've got an immense amount of partners. We've got Allcott tokenizing 500 million metric tons of carbon credits as real-world assets. We've got consultations going on with the leading registries, and we've got a massive Guardian ecosystem, so much so that our Guardian itself is the biggest open source repository of environmental digital methodologies. And these methodologies are going to underpin the next wave of these markets if they want to become as efficient as possible, if they want to create carbon credits at the highest grade possible. So we are scaling this market, and COP28 is where we've got to keep our eyes on this week. And again, we are here, we're driving real world value, and there's only going to be more of that coming into the next year.
Yeah, I have a few things I want to cover from this past week. I couldn't agree more with everything that you said. But over this past week, definitely go check out that Foundry interview with Andrew Aitken. We had a really good Banking the Bankless Twitter space, so you can check that out on the HBAR Foundation on X. The full interview is available for the tie with Shayne, so check that one out as well. Next week, we're going to have Hedera in Sports Twitter space. That's going to be on Tuesday. We're still trying to nail down the time. I think it's going to be noon on Tuesday Eastern, so check that one out. We're going to have Galaxy on there. We're going to have Karate Combat. We're going to have Sporting Crypto. And I'm trying to still work with SpheraWorld to see if we can get them as well. Of course, we're going to also have Shark Bites next week. So if you have any questions for Rob, make sure you drop them down in the comments. That's all we have. We'll see you next week.